we're going to talk about delusions and wisdom and biblical insults, because people don't know that you can make jokes and make insults at the proper time. Remember the discussion of propriety? We talked about what is propriety. That's things at the right time at the right place. Making poo-poo jokes at church is not appropriate. If you're in the comedy club, poo-poo jokes are appropriate. In fact, they are necessary. So there's a time and a place for things. Remember in the book of Ecclesiastes that Solomon wrote, he talked about there's a time for war, a time for peace, a time for joy. I think he even says a time for laughter. It's been a while since I read Ecclesiastes, but wait a minute. How is there a time for laughter and rejoicing when it's wrong to laugh? There's actually people who say that it's wrong to laugh. We're not just going to talk about biblical insults, though. We're going to walk through many of them. I'm going to shock you today with some of the facts and some of the tidbits, some of the things that I've noticed over the many, many years of reading the Bible. And I'm not saying this as some sort of self-righteous man. People think that I'm mean. I'm actually pretty cool with most stuff, and I don't usually preach at people. Preaching at people, it's a very, evangelical kind of thing. It's not what I do. But people think that correcting people is mean. They think that interrupting people when they're calling into my thing and it's a situation where I'm actually the debate coach, you see, we're not on equal footing when you call in. You assume that we're all equal and equally competent. That is one of the delusions that we're going to talk about today. Not everyone is equal. And when you call into the show, you are not treated as an equal unless you have demonstrated yourself to be an equal. So if you've done many debates, if you're a prominent debater person, I'm probably going to treat you differently if you called into the show or came on the channel than if you just called in and said a bunch of dumb stuff. Now, correction is absolutely necessary. You're right. That's the key point here. And again, there's a time and a place, and it's to be done with wisdom. And yes, you could misuse insults. We're going to talk about that too. That would also be an abuse of something. Your words, your rhetoric, all these things can be tools, can be weapons, and they need to be used at the right time, the right way. If you always spewed insults, that would be a defect of character. It would be a vice. But if you never made a joke or never snapped back, you might be a wuss. You might be somebody who is trampled on and walked upon. In fact, Jesus even says that if you are weak and watered down and all this kind of stuff, you are actually worth being trampled on. You get thrown out like saltyless salt and you get trampled upon. So let's get into, first of all, is it always wrong to insult? Is it wrong to joke around? Is it wrong to even joke about naughty bits? What? Yes, naughty bits. Are bad words bad? Let's start with some interesting biblical insults that you're probably not aware of, or you probably didn't notice when you were doing Bible study. Today we're going to study Bible insults. I'm going to teach you how to be mean the biblical way. In 1 Samuel 20:30, there's a funny story where Saul's anger was aroused against Jonathan, and he said to him, "You son of a perverse, rebellious woman, don't you know that I've chosen the son of Jesse to your own shame, to the shame of your mother's nakedness?" Now, wait a minute, you're going to say, this is Saul. Saul's a bad man. How dare you misuse the scriptures? Friends, this man is misquoting the scriptures. I'm trapping you. I did a clever turn of rhetorical trappery. I'm pretty much the male black version of Candace Owens because she's very cunning and she'll trap people. I just trapped all of you because most of you watched this and you said, haha, we got him. He didn't even realize that Saul was a bad man, and he's using Saul as a proof text. Oh, but how did I trap you? Because that same approach is going to be used by righteous men. Very similar statements. Uh-oh. So now I'll put you into a bind, son. I'll put you in a logical pretzel, because you're going to have to then condemn the righteous men for doing the exact same thing. Ooh. That's called tricknology. Let's take a look at this. Now, this one is interesting because some translators mention this as a finger. However, there are some translators that think this is not talking about a finger. And you could probably figure out which body part I'm referring to, which is similar to a finger, at least for some of you lesser men out there, probably a pinky finger. For you guys, I wouldn't know about that. But Jonathan says, the young men who had grown up with him spoke to him, saying, this is when Solomon has passed away, and these are the advisors who are speaking to Solomon's sons, and I think this is Rehoboam. It's either Jeroboam or Rehoboam. Thus you should speak to this people, saying, your father made our yoke heavy, but you make it lighter. Thus you will say to them, my little will be thicker than my father's waist. Now, it could be finger, but it also might not be. It could be a weenus. But now, wait a minute, Jay. None of this proves your point. Well, I'm just giving you some interesting examples. And we have pious people who are so pious that they wouldn't even read such subject matter. Oh my goodness, how dare even such subjects be discussed? Well, wait a minute. Let's peruse one of my favorite stories in this regard. And this is when Elijah is interacting with the prophets of Baal. Now, the prophets of Baal, much like Roman Catholic histrionic women saints, cut themselves to try to placate and call upon their deity, bleeding out as if this will bring the presence and aid of Baal Zebul. And there's a funny line that Elijah says here. Elijah says to the prophets of Baal, as they're acting out and acting like a fool, he says, call upon the name of your gods, and I'll call upon the name of my God. And the God that answers by fire is the true God. Right? And in verse 27, it says, Elijah mocked them and said, cry out. For if your Baal is the God, maybe he's meditating, maybe he's busy, maybe he's off on a journey, maybe he's sleeping, maybe he must be awakened. And some translations say maybe he is out using the bathroom. Maybe he's going potty. So Elijah mocks the deity of the prophets of Baal, saying maybe your deity is taking a shit. Maybe he's pee-peeing. Most of the translations word it that way. Oh my gosh, how could he ever speak? Please let his spiritual father rebuke him. Can somebody report him to the Israeli authorities, because the high priest needs to rebuke Elijah. So you're actually being overly righteous and prudish when you have this ridiculous attitude that no one could live up to. By the way, he's trolling them. Did you know that the book of Proverbs talks about, well, before we get to Proverbs, let's look at Amos. And then after that one, I got a doozy for you. I remember years ago when I read this in Amos, I thought it was funny. I think I did a video on Amos maybe 6 years ago. And Amos is rebuking the degenerate Israelites, and particularly the upper class of the women folk in Israel. And he says something very funny in I may have the wrong verse here. Oh, here it is. Amos 4, he says, hear this, you cows of Bashan. You oppress the poor. You crush the needy. You say to your husbands, give us wine, let us drink. He's calling the women of Israel fat cows. Maybe some of you don't have reading comprehension. Maybe some of you have never noticed this or you didn't realize this. He's saying that the Karens of Israel are a bunch of fat, drunk cows. They're wine moms. They're fat Israeli wine cow moms, wine mom cows. Yeah, the whole book of Amos is almost a troll. In fact, God even tells him to go marry a prostitute. What? No, wait, excuse me. It's Hosea, right? He tells Hosea to go marry a prostitute. Yeah, there was some OG Jewish wine moms. Oh, Amos, stop with all your talking, please. I just want to drink my Morgan, David. Amos, oh, with the prophecies and the preaching. Oh, be more pious, please. See? Y'all didn't even know. And just think of all the pious, super pious people. I would never, ever stoop to calling a lady a fat cow. Oh, then you're holier than the Holy Spirit, who's moving Amos to do this. You're so spiritual. Did you ever wonder why Solomon says, don't be overly righteous? What does that mean? Oy vey, you're being overly righteous. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. What do you know? Now, I'm about to blow your minds with this one because nobody reads Ezekiel. I've read Ezekiel many, many times through. It is a challenging text. Did you know there's dick jokes in Ezekiel? What? Goodness gracious, how dare this man speak in such ways? Did you know that the Puritans and the Calvinists would not read this chapter? I kid you not. In the churches, they would not read this. What? They were too holy for the Bible. Ezekiel, when describing Israel's unfaithfulness, holds nothing back in terms of wild sexual descriptions. Now, why would we have this type of a description if these topics shouldn't even be mentioned or discussed ever? Now, I'm not saying this as an excuse for you to go be all the time lurid, lewd, whatever. It's not an excuse. It's pointing out that it's not always wrong and there are appropriate times to even talk about some of these subjects, to even make jokes or analogies when it's appropriate. How do we know when that? There's no Spurg algorithm list that tells you every place in life when you can speak this way or when you, it doesn't work. That's not life, man. It doesn't work that way. But when describing the actions of Israel, Israel multiplied her harlotry in the days of Ezekiel, and in calling to remembrance the days of her youth, she played the harlot in Egypt. She lusted for her paramours, her lovers, whose flesh is like that of a donkey and whose issue is like that of a horse. What do you think that's talking about, goobers? It's saying that she lusted after big dongs, and the dongs were the size of donkeys, and the dongs had an issue of semen like a horse. Did you know that was in there? And then it talks about her pressing the Egyptians against her breasts. This is the chapter that Puritans wouldn't read. It was too rated NC-17. Yeah. Now, I don't know if it's talking about brothers. It could be talking about Egyptians, which I'm not sure Egyptians are always brothers. Yeah, it's very graphic. It's not my fault. I didn't put this here. And it's not my fault that you didn't know that. And you're so pious that to even discuss what's in the prophets is something that offends you. Now, this is an interesting one because a lot of people have argued with me over this over the years. I don't know why this is even controversial if you're biblically literate. The Book of Solomon, yeah, you could say ultimately it is a allegory, it's an analogy, it's a poem, it's a mystical description of the union of Christ and the church. But did you know that it's about a man and a woman having intimacies? Did you know that? Oh, but it's actually spiritual, and how dare you be fleshly? So wait a minute. So God created man and woman to have intimacies. That's fleshly when it's described in the Bible, and that's the thing that's the mirror of the union of Christ and the church. Now, Christ and the church is not sexual. It's just an analogy. But the thing that the analogy is based on is a real intimate knowing. Adam knew his wife Eve. And if you are familiar with what the Song of Songs talks about, it's actually pretty graphic. It talks about the lady's garden. And if she's not married, a virgin, her garden is untilled. It is a fresh garden. What do you think that's talking about, you goobers? Do you know how to interpret literature? This is talking about seduction. This is talking about arousing the woman. It talks about her breasts being fertile, supple, etc. And there's even sections that seem to discuss things that you probably don't even want me to mention. I don't get the point of this. What do you mean you don't get the point? What about what I'm saying is unclear? I mean, why are you zealous? I'm not zealous to make. You should just leave. This isn't for you. You're too holy for what's actually in Scripture. How many times have I covered this topic on my channel? Almost never. So what are you talking about, me being zesty and zealous to make nasty insults? This is one stream ever that we've done on this topic. And already we have the piety signalers in the chat who are too holy and too righteous for divine revelation itself. You explain to me why it is that the Spirit inspired the prophets to speak this way. Oh no, it's Jay's fault for citing it. Yeah, it's always my fault. What is wrong with you people? What's wrong with you? How could it be my fault talking about what's here? Anyway, the discussion moves into some pretty vivid stuff. Fragrances of the garden. The lady's garden is sealed and then opened. It is a fountain sealed. What do you think that's talking about? What's the point that he tried to make? What the You want to be more humble than you're exemplifying what I said. That you're more righteous than God. You are portraying yourself as too holy. What does Solomon say? You are holier. He said, don't be overly righteous. Yeah, it's should be obvious what it's talking about. And I'm even being guarded by not telling you what it's about. I don't care if haters clip it. It's they're clipping and disagreeing with what's in the scriptures. So that's their fault. Now, moving beyond the sexual jokes and images, if we go to Proverbs 11, a gold ring in a swine's snout is like a lovely woman who lacks discretion. That's an insult. If you're a beautiful woman and you're degenerate, you lack discretion, you're like a pig, you're like a ring in a pig's nose. That's an insult. Did you realize that? I mean, you understand that the book of Proverbs is a catechesis for young men. It applies to women too, but mainly for young men to prepare them for marriage. So you're going into marriage, you're going to learn about men and women. And Proverbs in part is dealing with that. That's why the book begins with warning young men about whores, about 304s. Now, one of the most common images in Proverbs is not just beware of whores, beware of the 304s. He even says stuff like, be ravished with your own wife's breasts. Oh my gosh, I can't believe the Spirit would speak that way. Oh my gosh. Now, just be honest with the text. Look at these people are like in the chat are like, they're holier than the Bible. Like, what? Why do you have a problem with, I mean, God created the world, right? God created men and women. His book talks about this stuff quite a bit. And yet you want to act like you're holier than the subjects that are in here all the time. Or often, maybe not all the time. That doesn't really apply to this. I don't know why you said that. For I was looking out my window through the lattice, and I saw a young man, devoid of understanding. He was walking through the streets, and there he met a harlot, and she enticed him, brought him in. She said, my husband's gone. Come sleep with me. On and on and on. Yeah, many Christians actually just act like Gnostics. It's really weird. They're holier than what's in Scripture. So what happens is that, and this is actually a delusion, I think, people devise a standard of what's pure and righteous in their minds just so that they can have a way to feel one-upped against everyone else. So they're better than everyone else. That's it. It's really nothing to do with reality, with normal human interactions, our actual positive bodily desires. It's everything rather to do with how can I have a standard in my mind which makes me better than everyone else? That's what it's about. And so to be offended even at discussing the topics which a grown adult should be able to discuss because it's in the texts is just childish and immature and weird. It speaks to a delusion in the people who, again, I just think want to craft a means of being able to say, well, I'm better because Jay talked about a bad thing and I'm above that. I'm better than that. Meanwhile, when you think about spiritual fathers and people advising people in marriage, what do you think most of the people are coming to the priest talking about? Oh, spiritual or sexual things, right? That's a big part of it. Back to insults and jokes and topics. Like, what's one of the recurring themes in Proverbs that I'm sure everybody's familiar with? The fool, right? It's also in Psalms. What does Psalm 14 say at the beginning? The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. Now, everybody loves to quote in their own self-righteousness, Matthew in the Beatitudes, when Jesus says, call no one fool. So, and people have used this against me all the time. If I call somebody idiot, moron, etc., how dare he say this? Jesus says, never speak that way. Wait a minute. How many times does Proverbs and Psalms warn you against the fool? Oh, like dozens and dozens of times, right? How could you keep the commandment to never call someone a fool if you must also identify the fool to avoid him? You idiot. You understand that you could never actually keep that command to avoid a fool if in your mind you can identify a fool? Well, that's just saying you can't call him a fool. Oh, but you can identify him as a fool in your mind and in your heart? I mean, it's so childish and stupid the way that people treat this stuff, and they pick a verse with no context, not read in light of the rest of the scriptures and the totality of it, and they try to erect that as the totality of everything. And that's the one moral command that everyone has. This is all out of hyper rigid Protestant Puritanism. It's also out of evangelical delusion and the idea that all insults are bad and all words that are not, I don't know what, spoken in NPR affectation. Oh, I have to talk like this, brother, because Jesus would talk like this. And true spirituality is to talk like an effeminate soy man. That's what they think. And that's why they act ridiculous. Now, let's look at Isaiah, for example. By the way, we're going to get to the New Testament, don't worry. But Rabshakeh said, has my master sent me to your master and to speak these words, and not to the men who sit on the wall, who will eat and drink their own dung with you? Wait a minute, that's pretty lewd, isn't it? Oh, you see, well, this is just describing a story. Well, wait a minute. Why are we having a story in the scriptures with lewd language? So while you're wanting to refute me and correct me and make yourself feel righteous, you didn't even realize that it's in the scriptures themselves. What about the prostitute that's cut up into pieces in the book of Judges? Have you read the book of Judges? Well, God is not condoning that. Yeah, I'm aware of that, but it's in the book. This is a lewd, violent story in the book. The book of Judges itself is rated R. Did you even read it? Did you know that? Your servant has killed lion and bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. This is David launching an insult. I think it's David. Let's see, make sure. Yeah, this is David and Goliath. David is insulting Goliath. Uh-oh. I guess David is wicked and unholy and not Jesus-like. Now, in all of this, there's something I think that's being highlighted, and it's hypocrisy. And I went and checked this morning, and guess what the most rebuked thing is throughout the Gospels? What thing does Jesus rebuke? Obviously, he rebukes the Pharisees, but what's more Pharisaical than what we're talking about? And when Jesus rebukes the Pharisees, what is it specifically that he rebukes? Does anyone know what phrase he uses over and over and over the most? Now, he calls them whitewashed tombs. He calls people dogs. He calls Herod a fox, which is an insult in Luke 13:32. He calls them a brood of vipers. He calls them hypocrites. Well, wait a minute. He's rebuking them. He's and also insulting them. To call somebody a viper, a snake, is an insult. He does this over and over and over. Well, that's Jesus. Yeah, but Paul and the apostles do it too. Well, they're apostles. Yeah, but the church fathers do. Well, you're not a church father. Now, wait a minute. How can I identify the fool, as Proverbs tells me and everybody, if I can't identify the fool? Do you see how stupid this is? This is the level of people who say that, call no man father. Jesus, call no man on earth your father. Okay, what about your dad? I mean, is your dad a man on earth? Call no man on earth your father. So, whitewashed tomb, hypocrite, snake, vipers is a common phrase throughout the Gospels. I guess everybody forgot this. Does Jesus always use insults? Of course not. Does Jesus call all women dogs? No. Does he at times do this? Yes. Now, being divine, being omniscient, and being the same person speaking through the prophets in the Old Testament to do the same insults throughout the prophets, major and minor prophets, right? He knew perfectly when was the right time to do it and when was not the right time to do it. And what he actually says is not that you could never call someone a fool. He says to call someone fool without reason or without a cause. So look, so in the chat, here's people just talking about why I'm bad. You can think all you want. Nothing, even if I'm the worst person in the world, Mars, none of that is going to change what I'm saying. And how is it? Why do you think that I think I'm never wrong? It's not even true. I've been wrong many, many times. Much of what we're going to talk about when we get into the delusions is delusions that I had. So people are here in the chat just hating on what I'm discussing, and I don't care. You can think whatever you want about me. What does that have to do with what we're saying today? Is what we're saying accurate and true or not? Dude, I'm the worst person in the world. Fine. I'm a satanic KGB sorcerer. You got it. Now, what does that have to do with this? Is this true or not? Okay, so again, I don't know where all these low tier people. 2 Timothy says not to make fun of people. Do you understand that you have to interpret all the verses in context together, right? You don't pick one verse and say, oh, this is the one that's true, and this one shuts down all the other ones. They're all true, in harmony. Well, sometimes it looks like it's saying not to do this, and sometimes it looks like it's saying we should do this, and you can. How do we know? Wisdom and propriety tells you when is the right case. When the woman is caught in adultery and she's humbled by this situation, does Jesus turn to her and say, you filthy dog? No. He says, let he that has no sin cast the first stone. So that was an appropriate situation for mercy because she was truly repentant. She was humbled by this situation. And it was an engineered situation that the Pharisees set up to trap Jesus anyway. And it also wasn't even following the procedure of 2 and 3 witnesses. So there's a lot of reasons why the woman caught in adultery, right, is a setup. And it's not even the best example. But in other situations, Jesus doesn't do that. So there's not one verse, all you immature kids, which is going to tell you what to do perfectly in every situation in your life. And that's the whole point of what Ecclesiastes is saying about the right time and place for different things in your life. Just think how obvious this is. This is such a common sense thing. Is it the right time and place to discuss lovemaking when you're at church? Of course not. Does that mean you should never in your life discuss lovemaking? No. Well, I mean, how are you going to get through life if you're married without that? I mean, it's just childish. It's silly. And why are people acting so sanctimonious when we all know that you're a human being and you're not any better than anyone else? That's the point. So who's actually acting pharisaical in this situation? Just think about it. Now there's more insults and there's more oddities in scripture. I think you get the point though, right? You could go through more, but I mean, Matthew 12:34, people are called snakes. Now, when you read the church fathers and when you read even holy men, for example, I have a couple quotes that I thought were pretty funny that a guy sent to me. Shout out to, forget the guy's name, but he sent me some of these quotes I was not aware of. So this is going to be, I think, fitting. Saint Cyprian wrote against Demetrianus, I had frequently treated with contempt your railing, noisy clamor in your sacrilegious mouth. Do not speak to the ears of the fool, lest when he hear you, he despise the wisdom of your words. He calls Demetrianus a fool, a heretic. Athanasius says in the Discourse Against the Arians, you Arius, the commencement of Arius, the flippancy and the effeminate tune and nature that he possesses. That's Discourse 1 Against the Arians. He calls his opponent flippant and effeminate. Jerome against Helvidius. I've waited to refute Helvidius, not because it is difficult, but rather because he's an ignorant boor who has scarce known the first glimmer of any education or learning. I was afraid that a reply might make him appear worth defeating. That's all insults against Helvidius. St. Jerome against Vigilantius. All at once Vigilantius has arisen, animated by a demonic unclean spirit, to fight against Christ. So he calls him possessed and a demon. We're not done. St. John of Kronstadt says, people like Martin Luther are sowers of dissent. They're heretics. They divide the church. They're animated sons of the devil. My life in Christ. They're wolves. Archbishop Averke. According to the Holy Fathers, where impiety is concerned, we should resort to fire and sword and not partake of the bad leaven of those infected by the Pharisees and heresy. Christ cannot be at peace with Satan. We cannot be at peace with atheists and apostates, nor with malicious heretics. There is no peace with the persecutors of the church. Does that sound like the way that all you evangelical and Orthodox piety signalers act? St. Ignatius Bryankanov. Faith is sacred. It is the sacred truth. Any other faith except this truth is superstition. It leads to ruin. Such faith is condemned by God. It is a faith of idolaters. Muslims and their false prophet Muhammad are heretics. They're blasphemers. They're heresiarchs. Rationalists have fallen intellects. The Antichrist will deceive all of his followers with this fake faith. Okay. He says again, you say that heretics are just like Christ and Christians. Where did you get this idea? Someone calling himself a Christian without knowing anything about Christ? You're in extreme ignorance. You're a heretic. This is from Orthodox Word and Life, 1965. Or excuse me, the 1991 version of Orthodox Word and Life that he stated in 1965. Do not take part with heretics or any of their blasphemous teachings. Heresy leads to spiritual death. They're devils, etc. I'm just paraphrasing because it's a long quote. Saint Anatoly of Optina, do not fear sorrows. Fear the stubbornness of heretics. They're stubborn. Consider them as pagans and Pharisees. That's Living Without Hypocrisy, page 48. Metropolitan Philaret. I wish to return to this topic of heresy and schism. It is permissible to be stern with heretics. One must never idealize any heretic, since the basis for the departure is not virtue, but their passions and their sins of pride, obstinacy, and malice. Sternness towards heretics is beneficial, not only for the sake of protecting people, but also for the healing of the heretic himself. That is Metropolitan Philaret of New York. We have seen, this is his letter to Abbess Magdalena. We have seen the Holy Fathers equate obstinate schismatics with heretics. Consequently, it is not proper to coddle them, nor should there be any false peace with heretics. Now, that's just a selection, but there are many, many, many more. We read St. John Damascus. He says that, and even on the Orthodox faith, he says heretics are ignorant, moronic fools. He says they're stupid. Wait a minute. How could he call them stupid? And I immediately know when people have this attitude that they haven't really spent much time in the Church Fathers, because the Church Fathers all the time are savage with rhetoric against their opponents. And yet the false piety and the false, oh, I just want peace, and how dare he speak this way. So hopefully, like, that helps people understand the basics. Now, what about debate? Is debate bad? It's surprising to me that this still comes up. Proverbs 25:9 says, debate your case with your neighbor. Do not disclose the secret to another. In Acts 17, Paul, as was his custom, 17:2, went into the synagogues for 3 Sabbaths and debated with them from the scriptures. What do you think that means there? It just says reason, the same word for debate. Acts 17:17, he reasoned in the synagogue, debated with the synagogues, in the synagogues with the Jews and the Gentiles, daily, debated daily. Oh, I thought debate was bad though. There's actually a passage in Ezekiel that talks about debating too. Let me point that one out. Yeah, I'm aware of, God says to Isaiah, let us reason together. This is God debating, you could say, with Isaiah. There's also an interesting passage in Ezekiel that I never noticed until the last time I read Ezekiel that deals with debate too. This one is interesting. Okay, let's see. Ezekiel, it might be worded different in here because this is going to be using the Masoretic text. Let's see what it says. If it is, I'll read it from the Orthodox Study Bible. So this is when Ezekiel is given the scroll to eat, which is a type of the Eucharist, right? The written eating the word, which is a type of the Eucharist. I will fill your stomach with the scroll that I give you, and my words will be in you. Son of man, go to the house of Israel, speak words to them. For you're not sent to people of unfamiliar speech, but to Israel. Not to people of unfamiliar speech whose words cannot understand. Surely I sent you and they would listen to you, but the house of Israel will not listen to you because they didn't listen to me. Moreover, son of man, receive into your heart all of the words that I speak and go to them and speak to them. And then the Spirit lifted me up and he sees the wheels again. I'll read you what it says in the Septuagint. It says, it's verse 7. Okay, I think it's worded different here. So in the Septuagint it says, the house of Israel will be unwilling to listen to you because they are unwilling to listen to me. The house of Israel is argumentative and hard-hearted. Behold, I have made your face strong against their faces, and I will strengthen your case against their arguments. Your argument will be continually stronger than a rock. Do not be afraid of them, nor be dismayed by their faces, for they are a house of provocation. I have made your face strong against their face. So the Masoretic makes it face. The Septuagint, which is the Orthodox text, says, I will give you better arguments than their arguments. So God's basically saying, go debate them. Don't worry, you're going to own them. God said own in a debate? Somebody expose God because he's being an ortho bro. God is being an ortho bro. Oh my gosh. And again, you got to read the Septuagint because it's a better phraseology here. Shout out to Cleve, welcome. We're talking about some hard subjects today, some tough subjects, but subjects that are actually everywhere in the scriptures. Yeah, I'm not kidding. You should read this. Here, let's see if we can make it to where you guys can see it. God is being an ortho bro. Uh-oh. Expose him. Expose him on the internet. Can you read what he says here? The house of Israel is argumentative and hard-hearted, but I'm going to give you better arguments. Your arguments will be stronger than a rock. Oh, I guess. Oh, we gotta tell the bishops. You gotta tell on God to the bishops and make the bishops rebuke God because he's being an ortho bro. Oh my gosh. Let's hyperventilate. Can we get God excommunicated? It's just so weird to have people act so petty and childish. It's just bizarre. So this is the thing, like, people don't understand what humility is. They think humility is affectation and performance. That's not what humility is. Humility is an interior disposition, first of all, towards God, and God knows your heart. Secondly, humility is total submission to what's true. It's nothing to do, ultimately, with the tone of your voice and whether you speak with NPR voice. It's nothing to do with talking about publicly on Twitter how much you pray. It's nothing to do with praying for 20 minutes like Scam Shamu on a live stream in front of everyone. Nothing to do with any of that.